Hello, this is Anton, and you're watching Non-Animated Antunes. Today, I want to talk about a new type of review. This review will be a review of the cartoon reviewers on YouTube. This community, which is called the cartoon community, includes everyone with some sort of a passion for talking about or analyzing cartoons. Maybe not all the time, but some of these people could talk for hours about them. If I can say one thing about all of them, it is that they offer a wide range of opinions on different topics, and some of them use very interesting or unique video techniques to further enhance their points of view. I may not always agree, but there is usually something that keeps me invested, and all of this and more are what I'm discussing today. Also, I may not get to everyone, just those that make me feel the most intrigued. Well, let's not waste any more time and get started, after a word about our sponsor, of course. Raycons are half the price of other wireless earbuds and they sound just as amazing. Raycons are great for working at home, pumping iron, or listening to the animation podcasts for hours at a time. Everyday E25 earbuds are the best model yet, with 6 hours of battery life, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a compact design. You'll definitely enjoy Raycons and you'll be in good company, because so does Snoop Dogg, Mike Tyson, Brandy, and many others. It comes in colors and a shade. Get them while supplies last. Go to buyraycon.com/antunes and get yours today. Raycons have a good battery life compared to the other earbuds, letting me relax while animating things for your viewing pleasure. All the long days animating deathbeds frame by frame, second by second feels much more easier when I've got death metal blasting my eardrums for hours at a time. Kids, if you want to be like me, you'll have to find your own way to relax and be productive. But I can guarantee 6 hours of battery life on one case charge will bring you that much closer to it. This has been Antunes Weisenberg. Enjoy the show. The first person we'll talk about is Animat, also known as Electric Dragon 505. Animat is good with his history lessons on animation. The way he is able to tell you about the tidbits of history, whether be on a grand scope or just about one particular film, it can be insightful. He is able to use green screen to his advantage, though he does not use it too often. But when he does, it is in order to give a quick add-in to his video, or to do some sort of effect like making his shadow move and talk, or having multiple versions of himself. He's arguably also unique in a few of his videos in that he doesn't just use his voice or an avatar, but rather has himself in front of a camera. His persona, however, can get overboard, seemingly ungenuine sometimes, and he sometimes interjects his personal beliefs into his videos, almost out of left field.
You need to learn to go and not complain your way through life, because whining and complaining will get you nowhere, and it makes you look like a bad person, like who you see on TV, whether it be like Trump or Caillou.
As we close off not only another year, but an entire decade, the way 2019 ended off the 2010s was like a smooth train ride. A train ride that's going at a breakneck speed, in which has gone completely off the rails, conducted by a bunch of insane and corrupted politicians who think they're immortal kings that's going headfirst off a cliff, leaving us all wondering when will this madness stop before it's too late!
It's not that I don't want him to have his own thoughts, but he seems to do it in a way that he's more trying to indoctrinate you rather than giving his own personal perspective. He can go over the top with his opinions too, like how he says Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is one of the worst things to happen to animation.
There is one thing that I truly am pissed off as all hell regarding what they've done. In the animated short, in the montage for all the animated heroes, everything is hunky-dory. They show all the good ones. Except they have to show the disgrace of animation using freaking clips from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? Who edited this? Seriously, are you a moron? You don't put freaking Cloudy, in that. That's just wrong. Literally, that's just wrong. I mean, putting Cloudy in a montage with all those other animated films is literally you're showing all the American heroes like Abraham Lincoln, or George Washington, and all those people, and then suddenly you'd show Charles Manson.
Not that he has to like the movie, but he seems to be reaching to say that this is one of the worst, when it is actually one of the best things to happen to the CGI industry, as this movie brought back the squash and stretch golden age animation to the 3D features. It was one of the first, if not the first, animated CGI films to use stretchy and organic animation, which doesn't feel stiff and lifeless. Sure, you may not like the movie, but to say that it is one of the worst is definitely not a smart thing to say. He also has a tendency to talk down to certain people about their own opinions.
This is almost going into the territory of Donald Trump in terms of not taking criticism. Like, this pretty much confirms that the people at Sony Pictures, they know for a fact that people hate the Emoji Movie. They hate its existence. They hate the fact that it's being made. And every single information that we've gotten so far, it's pretty much stupid. There is no way that anybody would be dumb enough to actually look at that and think, oh, this might actually turn out pretty good. Or, you know, I actually trust Sony Pictures Animation enough that they could actually make good movies, so I'm gonna go and be hopeful about the Emoji Movie. Nobody is that stupid, okay? Nobody is that brain-damagingly dumb to think that there was actually a chance that the Emoji Movie would be good.
He's toned that down recently, but it still pops up every once in a while.
In other words, Hotel Transylvania shares the same quality of animation as shows like Teen Titans Go, Thundercats Roar, and the 2016 Powerpuff Girls reboot. Rather, if that can be viewed as a good or bad thing, that could depend on who you ask. But don't be surprised if some would get angry about it due to their blind bias against those shows.
He even does that voice sometimes. You know, that voice. That one Patrick Star-esque voice whenever he tries to represent a possible different opinion from his, essentially making anyone who thinks that look foolish.
Animat is wrong when he says that Sony Animation is bad. The real bad animation studio is actually Illumination Entertainment, and Animat should bash that more so than Sony Animation. Oh, well, you know, now it means that Disney would own X-Men, Deadpool, and Fantastic Four, and that they would be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Why does Animat have to keep talking about politics? Oh my god, I just feel so offended right now, just the fact that he says it. This is the animation podcast, not the politics podcast. Why don't Animat just talk about the latest animated series instead of talking about politics?
He's not the first nor the last, but it really should not be a thing anymore. Mr. Enter is probably the most infamous for a lot of people. He does show that he can critique something and give points on why it is bad and how it can be improved upon, but there are also times when he'll say something that makes you say, really?
Hey SpongeBob, why is it wrong to swear?
There ain't nothing fancy about that word!
You mean...
Yes, that one! Now quit saying that! It's a bad word!
I see. Swearing is bad because swearing is bad.
There was also a period of time when his editing looked amateurish and his mic was shoddy at best.
Praise the Lord for that. There's only one Splinter and there's only one Appel for Gary. However, there is one area they don't relent ever, and that's turning the entire universe against Squidward.
To be fair, he has fixed up those issues since then.
The only thing bad about it is that it's used for the Wayside cartoon. That wasn't really a joke. It ends up delivering a promise that it can't live up to.
He also was originally just a voice talking over the footage that he has edited together. Now he has the avatar of a shady detective type of person. While he has strong opinions about certain shows, he still tries to not call his audience stupid for liking a show.
When I first saw that I was doing this movie, I got a reaction that I didn't really expect. A lot of people say that they really like this movie. And while that's fine, opinions are opinions, it made me kind of curious.
He only thinks people are stupid when they are getting into an idea that might cause harm to other people. I think one of the reasons people don't take him seriously is because he wants to be taken a little too seriously. The way he discusses and dissects cartoons sometimes make him seem a bit unhinged. Even if it was meant to be a joke, it still sounds pretty serious.
I'm going to be blunt. If you like this episode, there's nothing wrong with that. But you might want to leave now because I have very few good things to say about it. I really hate this episode. I mean, I really hate it. How badly do I hate it? I just might be ready to declare it the worst episode of the show, on the spot.
And yes, cartoons could be taken more seriously than people give credit for. It's just the way Inter does it can be off-putting. He has his series called Nicorama, reviewing every show by Nickelodeon, but the reactions it got from people ended up so negative that he deleted his Twitter. Some of the criticism was justified, however, such as the way he handled reviewing Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, how he seemed to not watch past episode 1. So many of his criticisms did not hold up. He even got flack for how he criticized the animation style, apparently not liking the simplistic style, even though it helps the focus on the faster-paced action. However, some things end up far out of his control. In one episode of SpongeBob he negatively reviewed, he called out specific writers. Said writers ended up getting harassed online, but Mr. Enter did not intend for this to happen, and even decried it.
Yeah, let's get this out of the way. Don't do that. Please don't do that.
There was also a point where he ended up with a stalker, someone he's talked about in a few of his videos. Incidents like these probably fueled his anger in his reviews and other videos, which more than likely added to his infamous status. Mr. Enter has tried to start his own work. With some helpers, he is trying to get his own idea off the ground, Growing Around, about a world where kids and adults switch social statuses of who ran the world and who were the ones growing. He managed to publish a book based off of this premise, and it led to some mixed results. He also had an Indiegogo where he tried to get his dream cartoon idea off the ground. Putting aside whether the cartoon is an actual good idea or not, it does seem to have some of the elements that he complained about in cartoons he reviewed in the past. But there are claims that he is trying to subvert the cliches that he commonly criticizes. However, even then, the way he handled the Indiegogo did not turn out so well. Just the amount of money he has as the goal alone is pretty much unachievable for someone of his status. Rebel Taxi, also known as Pan Pizza, has his own editing process that really pushes the envelope. When he first started, he had more of a chalk look to his character, which, other than type of animation, has never changed much in terms of design. As he went on, he started to do a little more for his show to become a much more memorable content creator. He first started by giving his avatar the ability to move his lips. Impressive at the time, but not much animation other than that. Then he changed it so his character avatar has a turtleneck over his mouth, thereby no longer needing to animate lip movement, but also has an Ed, Edd n Eddy-esque boiling line, always giving the illusion of being alive. Probably was done this way as a tribute to Ed, Edd n Eddy, as it's one of his favorite shows as far as I remember. He edited his reviewing show almost as an homage to Toonami, being on a spaceship looking at the computer screen with these Y2K futuristic looking aesthetics. While I do appreciate the overall look, the artwork of the avatar itself and Pan's other illustrations I'm not a big fan of. It seems he's going for the Craig McCracken style, although he called it the Y2K design in one of his videos. I guess because many of the UPA-like shows came around the millennium. Not sure if Pan ever brought it up, but I think games like Bust a Groove and Mr. Driller are probably his big inspirations as well. However, Pan's designs just don't quite hit the mark, as having a thick outline and stylized proportions doesn't make it pass as a proper UPA design. His color choices are fine for the Y2K era he's going after, but the proportions of his character designs are pretty mediocre. Even the most abstract designs require you to have a basic grasp of anatomy, and I think Pan needs to work on that. If you ever read Pan's Loki IRL comic, you'll see more clearly what I mean by his lack of anatomy and also composition knowledge. I'm not saying his general design skills are bad, as his video interface and the production values are top-notch. I only mean Pan's illustration and comics when I say his skills need more work. His humor can be edgy and also self-deprecating, telling people to grow up even while acknowledging he is an adult man reviewing cartoons mainly meant for children.
More like Stinky You. Oh my god. This brace cool block sucks.
Okay, normally I would say to these people, dude, chill. Move on with your life. It's a block no one remembers for preschoolers at 9 a.m. when you should be at school or I'm hoping work, but then I realize my career is doing just that. damn it.
It is probably why he tends to be considered the most respected of the cartoon community, although he does have an obvious interest, maybe more of an interest, in goth girl characters. This is such a running theme in his videos that he even made a list of his favorites, which could be off-putting for some people, especially since Rebel Taxi has been shown to really, jokingly or not, want to have sex with Raven from Teen Titans. Yes, Raven from Teen Titans.
I wonder what else she can do with 2 fingers.
He has even admitted to an event where he made a comment about that, and it freaked out Tara Strong, Raven's voice actress. Maybe he doesn't mean it, but considering what happened with someone that we'll discuss later, I'm surprised most people let it slide. He does do some things besides standard reviews as well. He'll title certain reviews in a way to indicate if something is one of the worst cartoons he's ever seen. He has some list-based videos, often talking about slightly more obscure forms of animation, including pilots. He even has podcasts, sometimes including a special guest. However, when he is just talking with his friends, the podcasts end up devolving into mindless dribble, which is mostly a bore fest to me. It gets monotonous and often repetitive, as the topics he talks about with his friends never really grab my attention. Pan Pizza's podcast currently and normally consists of himself, Nolan, an artist who has often slammed other artists out of jealous spite, Jim, a movie reviewer who doesn't appear much anymore as he has a wife and a child, and Izzy, formerly Steve Ray Bro, an animator from Yo Mama. She's trans, and I mention this mainly because she constantly brings it up.
What? Which by the way, I want to address that I am transgender and it was not a joke. Like, I do go by Izzy, and last month I've been, I know voice-wise, I still sound like a dude, but that doesn't change over time, and my girl voice sounds awful right now, so I'm not gonna, that's terrible. I hate using the bathroom in public.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
It's so stressful, because like, from afar, I'm pretty passable, and even relatively close, but when I speak, I'm not. And it's just one of those things where, like, if I bump into someone or someone says something, it reveals it, and it's awful. And it was one of those things where, like, I kept walking through, and I see a bathroom, and, like, I almost walk in, and I'm like, no, because I had, like, a little bit of stubble going on.
The leaks that happened, so, like, a lot of people went into the game predetermined to hate it, or be uncomfortable, or not like it.
Yeah.
And then, like...
always annoying.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, like, speculations on, like, whether or not Abby was, like, trans, and that sparked a lot of conversations. And now, like, the problem is, I'm not saying that everyone who doesn't like The Last of Us is transphobic. What I'm saying is, because of that fact that people thought that and have polluted the conversation, you can't tell who's actually disliking the game because they didn't enjoy the gameplay or story, or if they're pre-angry about stuff.
The podcast has only gotten worse because of Izzy, who pushed Pan Pizza's podcast into becoming more political.
Though I do have to say, as the resident SJW cock, like, I do think kind of neat.
Izzy, I want you to apologize for making me hear the
Cuck me up, Scotty.
I'm sorry for making a joke at myself, but anyways, I do feel have a knee-jerk reaction to a lot of the white men complaining about the Apu being departure. I know it's all about the principle, and there's people trying to coat this as censorship. I don't know if that's 100% accurate. However, I'm going to say that me, as a white person, I'm not going to say that my entertainment trumps minorities' comfort. And that's what it feels like to me a lot of times when people are reacting so poorly. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's more nuanced than that, but that was kind of my knee-jerk reaction.
Also becoming much less fun to listen to than it already was. And I think most of his subscribers will agree as well. Perhaps he should try working more on his podcast, where instead of him going on a random non-animation related ramble with his friends, you could have a more cohesive theme, to talk about animation. But considering how Izzy more or less took over, I doubt any meaningful changes will happen.
If you guys ever need, like, a TED Talk on race, ask Izzy, I don't know why. Mm-hmm. Like, and if you need a TED Talk on fucking baby dragons, ask me.
Next up, it's LS Mark. LS Mark has his own ways of reviewing cartoons, talking about how the writing goes and whether it has been handled well or poorly executed. He would usually have his own avatar talking a lot of the time, sometimes changing it up depending on which show he's talking about. He would go into why a show is funny or not, and why production-wise it may have turned out this way. Like his talk about Ren and Stimpy. He mentioned how when John K. is left to his own devices, or when other people worked on the show without John, it didn't pan out either way. The formula of making Ren and Stimpy as beloved as it was initially was John working with collaborators. That ship has sailed, but that truth is still there. Mark also talked about various shows in one video, whether they came from the same mind or just seemed very similar in terms of writing or animation. He also has his own tongue-in-cheek way of telling jokes. For example, while discussing Family Guy clones, he talks about Uncle Dog, referring to Dog, the nostalgia critic Walker, almost as a way of saying that he could be slightly derivative of Dog in a funny way. Though I would say that Ellis Mark's biggest issue for me is probably his accent.
The rabbits have personally wronged me in a way I could never forgive, no matter how much time has potentially passed.
Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
I went to an arcade in London last year, and they had set up a giant Rabbids virtual reality machine on display. I put on the headset, and instead of being greeted by the friendly rabbits at my side to hold near and dear to me, I was instead...
No! Will you stop blocking your face with ketchup packets? Sorry, it's all I've got. Do you have something in your throat? Blimey! Thank you so much, I can finally breathe.
I'm sorry, but I just often struggle to understand what he's trying to say. And yes, I know my accent isn't great either. Nintendo has a more standard editing style, with a few notable tricks of editing here and there. He loves humor and usually tries to be a bit more on the positive side, or at least not overtly cynical like most other reviewers portray themselves. He tends to have the positive attitude come across pretty well. He was able to talk about Thundercats Roar in a more positive light than most people would, and it is commendable that he stuck to his guns about what he does like and explains why he likes it. He said he felt it was relatively simple, but also animation friendly, allowing for breathtaking action sequences, quick but easy to follow. The action hits hard but still keeps up the comedy. He likes how each of the board artists have their own quirks represented in each episode. Though he does get into some negatives, like some off-model design choices that even he felt were unnecessary, or how flat a lot of the color backgrounds can be. He even shows he's able to take criticism, as he faved a few comments that respectfully disagreed with him on his perspective. He seems to prefer his slapstick to go off-model when it calls for it. He talked about one particular scene in his What Caused the Fall of SpongeBob SquarePants video, where he showed an example of how the on-model characters do not match the slapstick events that are befalling them.
Much of it doesn't work because the characters don't react as they should. It's slapstick but without the slap, and all that remains is stick. And sticks are just boring.
In terms of editing, it is pretty standard, with some interesting cuts but mostly clips edited together in the background with an odd edit here and there. Steve Reviews mainly reviews darker pieces of animation. He reviewed a few of the early Don Bluth films, a few anime, Watership Down and Plague Dogs, and many of those examples are rated for the whole family to watch. He would often go through the plot, stopping to show a bit that would probably tie into a criticism or a compliment later. He would often praise the music and designs, depending on how they are utilized.
The animation for this film is pretty decent. Backgrounds are these lush watercolors, characters are well designed, and you get some nice fluid movements throughout. I also love how the style of the film drastically changes. In the first half you have these very bright, soft and warm colours, which actually give it a very Disney-like look to it. But then in the second half, where Shirin is now grown up, the palette switches to a much darker tone, with a lot of blacks, dark blues and fiery reds, very much representing the emotional change going on in Shirin.
He's not as jokey, but he has his moments, usually at the beginning of the video.
Lambs. They're adorable. You guys. You have a habit of requesting really dark and weird stuff. The Ringing Bell.
He also has a small but noticeable series of videos called What Went Wrong with Such and Such, where he goes through a cartoon series that had changes and variations throughout the years. Steve talks about how the designs changed for the characters and how their personalities shifted and grew, or even devolved. He would even discuss how the writing has changed due to what plots are being created for the new season or show. Alpha J is a bit smaller channel, but still noticeable. His avatar is that of a panda. Alpha even implemented a nice-looking animated intro for his review series. He often titles his videos as the episode that will make you love this or the episode that will make you hate that, and he will give you reasons as to why he thinks people will think that way. He often is more of the writing critic, talking about how things are handled within animated shows. He does appreciate things like animation and music, but wants the writing to come first. His review of how Owl House started out demonstrates how he thinks shows can seem a bit standard, and suggests ways they could strive to be different.
Isn't it weird how Disney has put out 3 shows about main character is quirky and enters a new fantasy world and lives their life with cute, colorful, or dangerous creatures? And if you want to get technical, you can also count Gravity Falls because from what I recall, the main characters do not live there, and are only there for the summer. Putting aside the clear comparison to the other fantasy shows on Cartoon Network, this is a trend at this point, and it's gone unchecked. And that's because many of these shows are received pretty well. I love what Gravity Falls did. I enjoyed the first season of Star Versus, and Amphibia in its first few episodes. It was pretty okay. And the old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it technically makes sense here. So the only way the show doesn't become just another one of those fantasy shows is if it's good.
He also has a bit of a thing for romances, especially if he feels that they are done right. He made a video once discussing how Gumball does relationships right. He also did his own good episodes of Teen Titans Go List, which you can tell by the thumbnail that some of them involve romances. He also has videos dedicated to entire shows as a whole, titled The Rise and Fall, insert name of show here, what happened, detailing the history of some shows, their highlights and episodes, and why they got canned, sometimes too early. Phantom Strider is somewhat of a mixed bag. He does not do standard reviews so much, as lists are his bread and butter, but he does mini reviews within these lists. Phantom is also one of those who tends to be in front of the camera more than behind. He does usually stay as a voice through most of his videos, but he still shows his face more often than most other cartoon channels on YouTube. He ended up getting big enough that he managed to get a crossover with Doug, the nostalgia critic Walker, though Doug's contributions were a bit minor, just giving quick thoughts on the rankings of the list after Phantom did most of the talking.
Don't watch this movie if you particularly like cats. They all die. Did you have anything to say on this one, critic?
This makes Don Bluth's darkest moments look positively tame.
Not that his lists are all bad, though sometimes they are repetitive, predictable, and just downright wrong. Take for example his top 5 cartoons he hates that everyone else likes. Nothing wrong with him making the video in and of itself, but his points just end up not holding water and seem somewhat contradictory. This was especially apparent in his number 1 pick, Ed, Edd n Eddy, where he complained about the show's mean-spirited tone and claimed it is just about scheming kids trying to get jawbreakers. Actually, there are quite a few episodes not really involving that. There was one point when he said he hated all the ads. How can he hate all the ads? Maybe he came to his senses a little bit when he said he thought Double D was okay. Here he's contradicting his earlier point, which shows his self-contradiction. But his earlier point was wrong, so maybe that's a good time to self-contradict. There's more, but it shows that he doesn't always get things right on the mark when making these lists. He's a clickbait content creator most of the time, and I would say he is one of the worst reviewers in the cartoon community. Lily Orchard is a very controversial, person. Her reviews tend to be controversial in that she seems to attack shows that people like. Reviewers I'll discuss later, Easy Peasy and ER, have also had gripes against those same shows, but her own reasons seem to be based on ideas on how she views certain aspects of the shows. She thinks that Lapis is more of an abuser than Jasper, even though Jasper is clearly meant to be shown as quite an abusive character that has Lapis locked up for a while. Some of her other points are easy to agree with, like how the love triangle scene in Korra is quite annoying and drags the story down. However, there are some parts of her real life that seep into her work, such as her feud with her former boss, YouTuber Josh Scorcher, a feud that she seems determined to win out by any means necessary.
Josh tried that crap.
twice, and that's someone with a massive and rabid fan base who will go so far as to dox me and threaten to kill me and my family. And it still didn't get me to stop calling him out on his bullshit.
Wow, Josh did that? That doesn't sound like him. And you're not showing any evidence of him telling his fans to attack you. So I guess I'll just check out Josh's video for myself.
So I am begging, pleading, everyone who watches this video, do not go and leave death threats or harassment on Lily's video. Please. That's not acceptable under any circumstances. It's not right.
Whether this is justified or not, she ends up coming off as spiteful and bitter, and this can make her hard to watch. Plus, I guess I have to say this, Lily is transgender, so many of her videos have a female avatar, even though the voice representing said avatar sounds obviously masculine.
I have a long-standing history of refusing to cover certain shows if people incessantly bother me about it. Nothing kills my interest in a show more than the feeling that I'm watching it out of obligation to placate people who nag me.
It may not be an issue for some of you, but it might be for others. Seeing one thing, the avatar, while hearing the opposite, the voice. Her transgendered status still comes into focus in her tendency to demand gay princesses to happen in Disney films.
What this movie really needs is gay princesses. Yikes. How about next time, instead of the racist caricature, you add some gay princesses? How about you edit out the racism and edit in something better? Like gay princesses. Maybe next time, just add some gay princesses. Like, come on, Cinderella, you had one job. This is a terrible plot hole, Disney. Do it again, but with gay princesses. Unfortunately, like every Disney movie, it's severely brought down by the total lack of gay princesses. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. Gay princesses? The only thing that could possibly make it more fun is gay princesses.
It's a recurring criticism of hers that this has not become a thing yet. Her editing and joke structure could also leave something to be desired. For example, in her She-Ra review, where whenever she mentions the Horde, this clip of some character yelling the Horde plays.
This of Adora, a Horde. The Horde. She is in the Horde. Being the Horde.
She didn't do it that many times, but it sure felt like it. She also has the tendency to take cartoons more seriously, demanding that the people think through the writing process before putting them out for people, especially children, to see. Even if I do agree with some of her thoughts, there are definitely lines that divide me and her, and I can't quite see myself fully enjoying her content. Again, though, that's just me. Then there is the Round Table. They are a trio of guys that consist of Awestruck Vox, Tom, and Retro Nemo. They tend to discuss theories and some other topics related to cartoons, which could be interesting, giving you insight into moments of cartoons that you probably had not thought too deeply about, or had not considered at all. Though sometimes they can turn out to be wrong in their predictions, like in one video when they predicted that two personas from OKKO would be brothers, Laser Blast and Professor Venomous, but then it turns out to be the same person. To be fair, some people could get this wrong too. They usually have their videos edited to have cartoon avatars of themselves being in the forefront, though they sometimes appear in person. Vox tends to not take things too well, like when Vox mocked Amazing Axolotl for putting out spoilers after she watched a few episodes of Steven Universe earlier than anyone else. Amazing Axolotl is a Make-A-Wish child, so this led to a Twitter controversy. He has since apologized for that and made peace with Axolotl, but some controversy still persists. He made a recent video discussing the whole Rose Quartz is Pink Diamond reveal. He tried to say to not to attack others, to try to provide constructive criticism, but even within the video, he has a mocking tone when representing opposite opinions of his own, creating some more divide between his own thoughts and other people's thoughts.
So you could say, oh, well, their diamonds already put their foot down against Pink. Surely she felt as if she had no choice. No. Spin it around like, oh,
so many good things wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Pink Diamond, ruining everyone's lives. Ruby and Sapphire would have met if it wasn't for Pink Diamond, so it wouldn't have Garnet. Steven would have never been born. Paradox Redemption, so many good things.
No.
Lately it has been revealed that he's taking down even calm comments of constructive criticism against him. If reasonable comments are being silenced in their videos, then I am very unwilling to continue watching them. Toonrific Tariq is a pretty nice guy. He has his own reviews, being able to talk about how a character's design illustrates how a character is defined. When he reviewed the Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoons that were released in the 60s and the 80s, he discussed how each design choice within both shows had their own strengths and weaknesses, how characters seem more one-dimensional in one show while having more intriguing animation techniques, while the newer show had better looks and dynamics, but the actual animation ends up being held back by the stiffness, only true in being alive in certain movies. He does have a habit of making jokes that refer to his blackness, which can be sometimes funny but other times a bit annoying.
Yeah, musicality. Watch my other video. That's called motherfucking bars, nigga. You know nothing about that.
He would also talk about black characters in cartoons, which is commendable in a way. Tariq has his own avatar of a unique outline version of himself, giving him a more chill vibe in a way, compared to some other reviewers. Mars Reviews is probably one of the most standard reviewers of the community. He has a slightly similar vibe to Toonrific Tariq, but not quite on the same level as him.
The 2000s era will be remembered for many things. The iPod, Obama, 50 Cent being the most popular rapper at one time with not one but 2 video games.
His points feel very standard and been there, done that, with very little interesting edits, and he rarely even has his own avatar pop up. It is mainly just talking about the show with clips cut together. It's not terrible, it's just a bit unmemorable. Mars has, however, shown to be pretty honest in his reviews. It has led to him swearing a lot, probably more than every other reviewer here. He even went as far as saying the F word. This honesty has led him roasting some of the people in the cartoon community in a video called What I Hate About the Cartoon Community. While he does dogpile on them, he still points out a few good things they did, showing that Mars is not completely biased.
I've been shitting on Phantom Strider for a while now. It's kind of become a meme of this channel.
I think Phantom Strider gets terrible in every way.
But I'm just gonna come out and say, he isn't a bad dude. He's a good person. He's an okay guy. Like, he did a 4-hour live stream running for charity. And you know what, all bullshit aside, that's pretty cool.
Saberspark does the obscure and or strange. He has often been quoted as saying,
"What the hell is..."
Insert name of obscure or odd title here. Contrary to popular belief, however, this quote is not said as often as one would think, if at all in his videos. He does title his videos somewhat like that, however. He would often not only review the project, but also try and figure out the how and why of the making of said project, and any controversies that might have surrounded it. He may seem to be one of those who talks about the negative a lot, but he does sometimes find a project that is either not as bad as others say it is, or is even good in his eyes. In most of his reviews, he'll mention he has 5 main points.
First, the story. Next, there's the voice acting. Then there's the dialogue, editing. And finally, there's the animation.
He would discuss each of his points on whether they are well executed or poorly handled. As he's talking, he would often cut to his avatar to help express his feelings on the project he is reviewing. Whenever he makes a joke, when he says something and something else happens, he'll make a quick edit with a quack sound to indicate something went wrong without having to completely derail the video.
Remember the last Mario movie?
He even has this running gag now with his fans that since he has watched so much content that happens to be anthropomorphic, that he's really interested in anthros. He is, from a design and creativity standpoint, but nothing beyond that. He swears.
I know! Shut up!
Easy Peasy may not only do cartoon reviews, but the ones he's done are quite amusing to say the least. I have collaborated with Easy Peasy on one of my videos, so I'll be a bit biased. He has made reviews of things like Rick and Morty, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, and Steven Universe. His reviews would show in the writing and how the ideas that seem to be pushed are either not well thought out or are messages that should not be spread around. He often mentions errors of shows or even points when they are off-model, and points when the voice actors don't quite emote well. He also talks about how the writing can be flawed in some basics of storytelling, like how in Star vs. Marco gets his arm possessed, and after it was back to normal it was foreshadowed the possession would return, but all we get are a few nods here and there. Easy Peasy does mention when a show does something good, or almost does it, but would usually point out how those good things are outweighed by the bad.
In any case, the song isn't too bad and sets up one of the core themes of the movie and this character, specifically having feelings for someone and not realizing they've lost interest in you a long time ago, and Spinell developing a sort of abandonment anxiety as a result. Really nice theme for a completely different movie. As usual, I'm left asking, who is this for exactly?
There are a few points I don't agree with, like when he mentioned how Steven Universe had some staff members doing voices for their characters, and how he put that as a negative, another way to help push their agenda. The only thing is that staff members who are not normally actors voicing cartoon characters is nothing new. This has been going on since the Rubber Hose era. He's also chosen to make deafening sounds in the middle of his videos, almost as his trademark.
The drill? Yeah. Oh my gosh! Now it's music!
That's probably just him being a bit trollish. Yeah, let's assume that. But I still respect his overall feeling that animation entertainment should be just that, entertainment, not push an agenda so much. ER is pretty close to Easy Peasy, minus the ear-deafening incidents. Like Easy Peasy, he doesn't review often, but when he does, it'll be of a show that he feels is beyond terrible for many reasons, whether it be the plot or what morals it seems to represent. He seems to have a strong dislike of cartoons that are made recently, but doesn't hate them all, as he definitely is a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. However, he does feel that the sequel series is quite inferior for many reasons, such as story contrivances, character motivation, not portrayed well or being non-existent, and that the titular character is not really portrayed as likable. He made sure to compare the original Avatar to prove his point of how the characters are much better there compared to how lacking the Korra characters are in development and sometimes morale.
She was overwhelming at times to the point of annoyance, but the good she tried to do always outshone the bad.
I can't believe you lied to everyone so you could help these people. I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't have. No, I think it's great!
Would Korra have done the same as Katara in that desert? Well...
Oh, right, so I guess that's my fault too.
Bitch! She would be complaining to anybody within earshot about her misfortune, telling them to get her out of there, and how dare they fuck up the situation so badly.
He also talked about Steven Universe and how their storylines tended to not jive well due to their unsettling undertones when you think about it, although Easy Peasy also covered this topic.
Hey guys, Pie Guy Rules here, and welcome to my channel.
Pie Guy Rules is different from most. He does reviews, but it is not the same as other channels, and he does not really do them as often. When he does do them though, he is one of the rare reviewers who does not use copyrighted visuals. He's not going into reviewing projects in an animation sense, but more in a writing sense, such as with his SpongeBob season reviews. He would have screens where he shows fun facts about the episode and his personal highlight and notable quote of each episode. He would then attempt to breeze through each episode, why it is good, why it is mediocre, or why it is bad, or as he coined. It was originally just a screen as he talked, but he later got an avatar that changes expression depending on what he's talking about and what mood he's feeling. He also does a series of square theories, talking about his own personal theories about certain aspects of SpongeBob, and the Spongy Bits, talking more in depth about episodes that he only scratched the surface of before. He also reviews some other cartoons as a whole in some videos. Cellspecs has her own reviews with a minimalistic, somewhat silhouetted avatar representing her thoughts. She reviews movies, though occasionally she talks about TV shows, and does make sure to highlight all aspects, from the animation to the characters, to the hidden nuances that each property she watches tries to implement. She also would often have recommendations at the end of her videos for shows or movies that are currently being made and not as often talked about.
But I've also been wanting to recommend a particular thing for a while, but especially before Netflix gets rid of it. The Long Long Holiday is a French-made mini-series about a group of kids growing up in the French countryside over the course of gradual German occupation in World War II. Oh yes, we've shifted the tone here very drastically. What starts out as a very charming slice of life, over the course of several years, the war grows ever closer and closer to the village until it lands right on top of them, and the children are given opportunities to do something useful and proactive. And it is really good. I remember initially only wanting to check it out, and before I knew it, I had binged the entire 5 hours. It plays a lot more out like a kid's adventure movie with substance than a depressing war movie.
Occasionally she does this within the review itself, saying how one thinks is better than another, and it gets a bit annoying sometimes.
And it's not as though I can't get on board with cute for cute's sake, with super low stakes. Oh my god, roommate is a cat! My Roommate is a Cat is the Secret Life of Pets concept, but with this ultra introvert and cat always trying to interpret what each other wants. Not a lot happens, but it is so flippin' adorable and so heartfelt, and you feel the connection between the characters, and seriously, do not watch this. Watch Roommate is a Cat.
She also has a thing about how fathers are portrayed in animation, feeling that many of them are mistreated and deserve better writing, which I commend her for. She even did a list of top dads, which is a great watch.
This is partially in tribute to my own dad because he also hates the dumb dad trope. Never mind The Simpsons, he didn't like Berenstain Bears, where you only have to look at several of their covers to get that Papa was basically another child to discipline.
Other than that, her videos are more on the standard side in terms of editing, which could be not as interesting for some of you. Red Von Buskirk, formerly Rubber Bodies, is not as well known, but is still a treat to watch. She has a bit of a similar energy to Cell Specs, but is actually more fun to watch with her spunky attitude. She uses much more editing tricks, perfectly talking about various things that detail why a project does or does not reach its fullest potential. She would talk about compositions of scenes in order to better convey a character's feeling or status. She could tell you about how keyframes work in the process of animating cartoons. She could even give you knowledge on how a fight scene could play out.
And I call it the WEC rule. WEC is an acronym that stands for Weight, Environment, Composition, and Character. These are the 4 traits that you must have to make a good action scene. There are other things you can have, like music, color, and choreography, but that's the icing on the cake. It's not essential. These are what's essential. Allow me to elaborate. Weight stands for both the literal weight of the characters and the impact of their attacks. Next up is environment. Environment means to both set your characters in an interesting location and have them use and interact with it throughout the scene. Then there's composition, which I already talked about, so just keep in mind that visual clarity is very, very important in fight scenes. And finally, character. The need to understand the characters in the fight and who they are as people.
She illustrates these points with her fine editing, making the videos more engaging. Shadowstreak is probably the smallest reviewer of the group, but I do actually enjoy his content. His main reviews have been related to, not surprisingly, the Powerpuff Girls, the 2016 reboot. Now you might believe that I'd be the first one to ignore him completely, but I am actually intrigued in seeing him going episode by episode, dissecting the Powerpuff Girls reboot to find what's good and what's bad about it, as he felt it gets a little too much hate than it deserves. He stated no matter what, the original show will always be superior, but he wanted to see if there's still some value to find in the new show. Though with some of the good, Shadow still obviously finds a lot more bad, not to mention all the times when he finds plots that repeat story ideas from the original show. The negative aspects are usually more apparent when the continuity does not line up as the episodes get released, but he doesn't get too biased about the negative aspects and can make good comedy on what he finds.
He tells them that he refuses to support such a thing because their slogan is an offensive term to live by, and I have to agree with him on that. I would never support something I don't feel would be worth my time or if I feel it delivers a bad message. Especially if it's a cheap cash grab that's meant to take advantage of people by using something they're familiar with and then stomping all over it by taking away everything that made the original product special and leaving them with an empty excuse for a reboot that doesn't actually do anything spectacular because it's full of animation errors that are very hard to miss and incoherent story writing that leads to a lot of characters not making any logical sense because the things they say and do each episode don't line up with each other, which is ultimately the reason why I started reviewing this show in the first place, because I found it disgraceful that such a network would ever even attempt to revive a show as beloved as this and not give it the care and attention it deserves, but rather just milk the franchise for any cash it could possibly get. Not to mention the fact that it just steals all of its episode ideas from the original series and claims them as its own anyway, so it's not like they're even trying to make something new and exciting out of it, because who needs to put effort into something when they could just tug at everybody's nostalgia and bank on the fact that they'd be willing to spend money on the merchandise for the sole reason that they remember loving it fondly during their childhood, when in reality those people do not care about the new show but rather the same original show that brought them joy and happiness. Something that this lifeless shell of a reboot can never provide.
And he has gotten legitimately surprised by what the show does from time to time. Now, if you think you won't be interested, either because you don't want to see reviews of the new PVG or because you think one form of content content will get stale after a while, do not fret, because he has been slowly branching out with a few other reviews, such as with Samurai Jack and The Grinch. So I hope as Shadow Streak branches out, he has a bright future ahead of him. Now I ended up deciding to save this person for last, and if you do not want to hear about him, skip to here. But I think he deserves attention for the work he did, despite what has been revealed about him. I try to separate art from the artist, so here we go. Cosmodor has some of the best editing within his videos. He is able to meticulously craft his videos to give an intriguing look into his topic, such as when he's reviewing the Kung Fu Panda trilogy, helping to illustrate why he thinks the trilogy holds up so well. His points and jokes also appear to be well thought out, enough to make you want to keep watching.
Master! It's very bad news.
There is just news. There is no good or bad. That is bad news.
I especially appreciate his reviews on much lesser-known animation pieces, such as Disney's Bonkers. His career on YouTube may be over, but his work is still worth checking out, no matter what he did in his private life. Feel free to disagree, but I'm not into the cancel culture. And with that, it is time to come to a close. I'm sure there are some others that you want to discuss, which I would not mind at all. I will leave a link to all the channels I've talked about so that you may decide for yourselves if you thought I was right on the mark, too harsh on them, or praising them too heavily. But don't just simply attack them just because of things I said. Make your own judgments and think responsibly about how to handle it. At least try to be a better person than some others have ended up being. With all that said, this has been Anton and you are watching Non-Animated Antunes, and until next time.